as we both know, one of the biggest issues recently has been the tariffs.
Yeah,
It's kind of dominated the headlines and kind of left a lot of uncertainty. And I think at first we thought that it wouldn't affect pharmaceuticals because I think there's some law in place that prevented that. But it looks like there's going to be a 15% tariff now. And you mentioned you may change some of your development activities
right.
to be tariffs. And I'm just wondering, what are some of the implications for U.S. companies and consumers of those? And the first one that comes to mind is there's a lot of patients on a lot of generic products, like the
Yeah,
standards, like for Lipitor or blood pressure medication.
statins. Yep, 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 for
Yeah,
sure.
and
Yeah,
if there's a tariff on that, that's just going to get passed directly through because there's not a lot of margin on those generic products, right? I mean, they're already at like razor thin margins. So,
right.
that's the consumer side. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on kind of the business side and also the consumer side, if you have any thoughts on that about the implications of this after after they've been in place for a while.
Yeah, all good questions, and I think so. Pharmaceutical supply chain is typically very complicated,
Mm,
so it's very global. So take Qsymia, for example. The manufacturing process takes us probably across 6 countries,
mm,
right? So between the AP, we have 2 APIs, we have excipients, we have capsules, we have paper, we have bottles, and so when you kind of take the build of materials of a pharmaceutical, um, I've seen them, probably the most complex pharmaceutical that I've worked with in my life probably had 15 different countries contributing to, technology components, whatever it was, to that product before you ended up, and this was a sterile fill finish vial product. And so, and then you have the added component of it's very difficult from a regulatory perspective to just swap out a vendor.
oh, right. Yeah, because you got to get
Right.
FDA clearance on all those
Right.
manufacturing
Yeah. So,
facilities,
and
make
that
sure
can
they're
take as long
GMP.
as, yeah, that can take as long as 2 to 3 years. Or if
Yeah.
you want to move your manufacturing location from one location to another, you do a thing called tech transfer.
Mm.
And a tech transfer is expensive from a monetary perspective, and it's all expensive from a time perspective. So it takes a couple of years. And so as a pharma manufacturer, you have to ask yourself, this kind of complex question of, okay, am I just going to eat the price? Am I going to pass the price along? Am I going to try to optimize to this new set of, this new reality that I face? And so it's a pretty complicated question, and it's much more complicated than I think people, want to, fully acknowledge.